I love this gospel lesson particularly. It's not because I don't um, love the fact that we're all sitting here together and we're all middle class people, and I doubt that many of us have had to resort to prostitution or thievery to live. If we have, well, God bless you. It's the hypocrisy of the world that looks down upon people marginalized and put into completely implausible positions that infuriates me when someone thinks that they have the right to see someone as lesser than they. If Jesus, the Son of God himself, God, the hypostatic union, Michael, God, fully man, if Jesus does not deem equality with God something to be grasped at, but humbles himself and becomes as a slave even until the point of death, then who are we to look down on the prostitute or even the thief? Who are we to judge a situation that we know nothing about? We have to have standards, we have to have laws, but we also have to have compassion. And the law, if it's divorced from compassion, becomes brutality. If the old classic ethics tropes, you're a little boy, 5 years old, you're in one of the Nazi death camps, you're allowed to play. They're not paying attention to you because you're little. Your little sister is starving to death in the barracks. You can reach through that fence and steal one of the commandant's cabbages and feed her. Is that wrong? No, not to do it is wrong. There was an Episcopal priest named Joseph Fletcher. He happened to be a good friend of my cousin whose house I live in now. Joseph Fletcher taught at Tufts for many years. He ultimately renounced his priesthood. I've never understood all the reasons. I have some of his papers, but he wrote a very famous book that some of you may remember because it was used in colleges for many years. Occasionally you still see it. It's called Situation Ethics. Joseph Fletcher became so annoyed with the kind of Jesuitical or Thomistic morality that dominated not just the Roman Catholic Church, but the Episcopal Church and all the Protestant churches at that time, which basically was a black and white ethic. And he said very famously, have any of you had any real life whatsoever? Have any of you suffered tremendous pain? Have any of you been hungry or thirsty? These things do things to us that skew our sense of what's right and wrong. Ethics can only be judged in the particular situation at the particular time. That which is ethical has to be, it's not that it's relative, it's not that there are not any absolute truths, it's just that the moral behavior of a person is based on a very complicated calculation, which includes their mental capacity, how well educated they are. Not that educated people are more moral, they're not. Sometimes they're educated to be less moral. But it means that these things are relative, and the judgment, this is all the more reason to really pay attention to the often restated warnings against judging others, lest ye be judged. It's not our job to judge. It's not our job to mollycoddle. If somebody does something that's hurtful or wrong toward others, you say so. But you don't judge their eternal soul, or you don't write them off. We have to judge with love and compassion. And if the law lacks compassion, the law becomes the tyrant, becomes brutal. These people acted really naughtily. Poor old Moses. They were just beating the hell out of him. They were fixing to stone him. Kay and Al and I were at this place. It's in what's called Wadi Moshe now, the Wadi, the Valley of Moses. It's south of Iman and above, is it above Petra, before Wadi Rum in Jordan? So beautiful there. You're driving along and there's a little village and there's a little stone kind of building in the midst of the Kanufi shops and whatever, just sitting there. And you walk in and there's this stone kind of floor that's kind of eroded a bit. And this beautiful spring comes up out of the rock and runs, and it goes down into a conduit, which ultimately, I was told, runs into the Jordan River. And tradition says this is where Moses struck the stone. I have a bottle of water here somewhere I took. There's something, I don't have any idea historically if that is in any way accurate. It didn't matter to me. But metaphorically and symbolically, it was hope in the middle of the wilderness, in the middle of the Kanufi shops and the date vendors. And here's this beautiful water bubbling up. And so everybody around that water selling their wares, et cetera, it made me happy. You know, I heard some lady say, wow, it's just sticking right here in the middle of town. You know, there are all these shops around here. It's like it's nothing special. Oh, it's everything special. It's what makes that commerce possible. So everybody around it is thriving because that water is coming up in the middle of the desert to meet their fundamental needs. If we don't care about the fundamental needs of humanity, if we don't care that our sisters and brothers are clothed and fed and sheltered, if we think that that's not our problem, if we think that we can write it off by saying, well, you know, guess what? They have personal responsibility. Of course we have personal responsibility. And of course we should hold one another to that personal responsibility. But we also need to be truthful and realistic, arduously scientific about exactly what it is we do to one another. Because believe me, sisters and brothers, we do things to one another globally. We create systems, economic systems. We create social systems that make it much, much, much more difficult, if not impossible, for people to access the water from that spring in our society. We block them from that water bubbling up in the desert, from that stone that was caused to yield. We become the stone. We become a second calcification over that original stone that's been broken. And we keep our brothers and sisters from it. That's not to say that people don't make morally bad calculations or choices. It's not to say that people are all completely innocent. They're not. But that's not primarily our responsibility. What's primarily our responsibility is the responsibility that was given to Moses, to listen, to obey, and to provide, to serve the people of God. If you think in this society, as some politicians evidently do, that we're going above and beyond, and everybody is getting an equal share, an equal chance, then one, you're a liar, because you know that's not true. And two, you're cut off from the reality of people's lives. In my years as a priest, more in the past than now, thank God, because I'm not a terribly strong person. When I was a young man, I worked as a social worker for some years, and as a priest early on, I spent a great deal more time going here in Brooklyn with something called the Brooklyn Ecumenical Cooperative. In the very midst of us, there is such incredible squalor and poverty. There's such desperation. There's such unbelievably complex realities that are hard to unfurl. Somebody said to me some time ago, a precocious child, "Why are you so fat?" Oh, honey, it's going to take me a while to explain that one to you. You know, I've spent a lot of... Shut up, damn dog. Spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to figure that out myself. Some of it I understand, some of it I don't. All of our human realities are complex. In the midst of my present ordeal, if anything I can say is I hope that it has made me even less of a judgmental person than I was before. Because when we encounter life in what can be, and I haven't been there, I'm not saying that I've been there, but what can be deep, dark passages of pain, deep, dark passages of despair, addiction. When we encounter those things in life, they make us fearful because we understand that we also have the capacity to go to those dark, horrible places. Now, some of us, when we encounter that, our instinct is to just not look at it or to run away, to hide our head in the sand. Some of us, when we encounter that, is to judge it and blame it and find somebody to say, well, that's because you XXXXX. But I hope that more and more of us look at it and say, I don't know why it is that way. What can I do concretely to help you? And if the person won't be helped, can't be helped, we just hold them and we're present, whether they like it or not. Have you ever been present to somebody who didn't want anything to do with you? It's difficult. Just do it, even if you have to distance yourself. Be present. We have to be present with one another. We have to be patient with one another. We have to be forgiving of one another. And we have to be strong because we have to have one another to work together to overcome the challenges that are set before us. So I hope in the midst of the COVID and the political and social upheaval of this time in our society, that one of the things that we learn to practice is patience, loving kindness, because love's the answer. It sounds trite, doesn't it? I think it's a song and a movie. When Nelson Mandela left the prison, he said that he left choosing love because if he left with hate, he would still be in prison. So it's for us to choose love, no matter what happens socially, no matter what comes at us. We need to fight. We need to speak up. We need to tell the truth. We need to refuse to cooperate with the hatred and the nastiness. But on the other hand, we need to practice patience, loving kindness, a kind of truly loving truth-telling that's not afraid. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.